Day 12 will be our last day touring, and we'll be on the bus most of the time. It's a 4-hour drive down to Petra and a 4-hour drive back, with a few hours in Petra. This is going to be a rather large video, one of the longest of the days, because I'm going to show both going in and coming out of the Sikh. I think it's just so interesting. Before breakfast, we get up and look off our balcony just to see what's going on. It's still hazy out there over the Dead Sea. And there are some people ready to set out and explore. Moving through the forest. The laughing doves are all over everywhere, and they're really soothing in their cooing. And of course, Deborah's out pestering the local cats. She just can't seem to keep her hands to herself. Now time for some breakfast. Soon we're on the bus and driving along the Dead Sea, headed to Petra.
It was 20% before in the 70s.
Now, she experienced in her body that she was healed of her affliction.
For the first hour, we'll be taking routes that we took yesterday as we were coming down to the Dead Sea.
Was changed. And so
And now we reach the King's Highway and we turn southward and drive through the wilderness area. We'll be on it most of the day. There are shepherds everywhere. About halfway to Petra, we stop for a rest break, some bathrooms and shopping, and we can look at a gas station. They pump their gas for them after they pay. So let's compare their gas prices. At the top is 1 dinar, so that would be $5.64 a gallon. After a little shopping, it's time to get back on the bus and head southward again. Deborah got some Turkish delight.
It sure is a long drive to Petra, but I bet it was worth it. All those beautiful rocks and fantastically carved tombs. They spent so much time and money building them to get ready for death. I wonder how much time you spent getting ready for your own death. Are you working on your relationship with God with the same effort they put in to impress others at their death? It sure is hot standing out here. I know you like having that air-conditioned bus ride in. Well, have a good night, and I know you head home tomorrow.
There are little towns scattered throughout this area. Each one has a deep well, or they couldn't exist in this desert area. And this is the land of the shepherds, as you can see. We are told these trucks are prisoner transport trucks, and they had armed guards with them. The land, as we head down into the land of Edom, is flat and dry. In fact, 80% of the land is so dry that they can't live on it, especially in the south, and they live on only 20% of the land normally. By drilling deep wells in this area, they can have things like chicken farms and even drip irrigation. But normally it's just the land of the shepherds. Even in this desolate area, people still claim property. And if you notice these stones stacked on top of each other here, this is a property line marker. I'm not sure what they're claiming. And here you can see another one with a line going from it. They're trying to start using alternate forms of energy, so they have built a big wind turbine farm to use the wind. And now we're turning westward and into the land of Edom. Along the way we'll be seeing many camels. The life expectancy of a camel is 27 years. It can go 8 days without drinking water and then drink 61 liters in 10 minutes. This one I think is drinking milk. Petra was Sela when the Edomites lived here in the Old Testament time. And then they left, the Nabateans came about 100 BC, stayed for 200 years until 106 AD, and then the Romans moved in and built a city in the Decapolis, and now we're entering Wadi Musa at the edge of Petra. Wadi Musa is the modern town that is the gateway to the archaeological remains of Petra.
So the crack you see just in the middle, you see that crack in the two mountains?
And over there on the horizon you can see the mountains of Petra. They seem to stand out. It's a totally different color.
At least 10,000 people.
Soon the mountains are more and more visible as we get closer to the visitor center. You have to go down in the valley to get there.
That we have a beautiful museum just opened 2 weeks ago. The most beautiful museum you'll see in the Holy Land is your time screen here for the Nabateans. You just sit there and it will show you all the dates and all the
And then we arrive and go through the obligatory shopping experience before entering the gate. After the Byzantine time, when the Arabs came, this was pretty well lost to Western society. But then Burckhardt came in 1812 and all of that changed as he found it again. It's a large area and we'll be taking this route through. There's much to see here, and we're only going to scratch the surface. It would take you 2 or 3 days to see the entire thing. So we get our tickets at the visitor center, and we head in. There are 4 ways you can get into Petra. One, the traditional way, walking. Most of our people will choose that. Some could ride a horse if they wanted to as far as the Sikh entrance, but not into the Sikh itself. You can also take horse carriages in, but they're limited in the amount they can carry. A few will choose this. We're going to take a golf cart in. It can take 5 of us and is fairly smooth. It is about a mile to get to the Sikh, and then it's a mile through it into Petra itself. There are about 800 individual monuments within Petra, and we're going to start seeing some of them before we even get there. The first monuments we come to are digens. They're square blocks that are used as memorial monuments. On along we come to our first tomb facade, the tomb of the obelisk. There are 4 obelisks on top. I was going to take the carriage even if we had to do 2. This is where you would stop the horses. The steepest part, but this is where you stop. The Seek is a natural geological fault line and has been worn smooth by water erosion flowing through it. The Nabateans were very good at diverting water through this water tunnel to keep it from flowing down through their main street. And now it's time to enter the Seek itself, with its walls 300 to 600 feet above us. It is a very narrow place at times. At the beginning of the Seek, the Nabateans had guards and a gate. This gate looked like this. Large caravans of camels would pass through that gate on a regular basis, going into and out of the city. Note that there are aqueducts on each side bringing water into the city. Even though now some of it is broken, it still would have brought in large amounts of water. See, that would have been an aqueduct there coming in. All along are dams to hold back the water when it comes in from the wadis when it rains. And then they would use this water inside the city by carrying it in with aqueducts. Sometimes it seems the walls almost close in on top of you. But they're not taking as many pictures. And now we come to an end and start getting peeks of the treasury through the rocks. And you're going to come out, and there it is.
We take pictures of them coming over the gate.
It's a beautiful sight as we enter, and there's the treasury in front of us, one of the largest monuments here.
You can take pictures. This little voice.
The treasury is located here on our map. And this is the first place people come when they come out of the sea. The structure is 120 feet tall and 84 feet wide and carved out of the bedrock. It's been here since the 1st century BC. And on each side of the door are Castor and Pollux, ready to guide spirits into the underworld. The legend is that Moses' pharaonic treasures were so heavy they couldn't carry it, so they left it here, and it's called the treasury. People have been looking for it. We also looked for the Indiana Jones room, but couldn't find it. Out the door you can look back at the sea, and at night they light this whole area with candles. It's truly beautiful. You can also get a camel ride here, and looking around in the area you can find other tombs to go into. Now it's time to leave and head out to the right and head on over to the Street of the Facades. After passing the treasury, we're on the Street of Facades. Tomb upon tomb upon tomb lining this main street into Petra. There are also donkeys everywhere, and they'll give you a ride from one place to another, or even up into the mountains and back down, if you really want one. Another thing here is vendors trying to sell you something. Almost any kind of souvenir. And as usual, Deborah is committing doggatry, petting a dog that's not hers while hers are locked up in the vet's office. Let's take a look inside one of these tombs. Colors are really beautiful. Well, let's go inside and have a look. Now realize these were never meant to be homes for living people, but for souls. It was a place where they would come and eat a family meal together with the deceased every once in a while. That was part of their religion. Now, maybe eventually on down the line people lived in these, but that was not the original design of any of these. They didn't live in these. They lived out in the open areas in the valleys. This street dates from 30 BC. I think the stones at Petra are as beautiful as the flowers. Let's just look at them a few minutes. This is the only theater in the world that was carved totally out of bedrock. It had 45 rows of seats and could seat about 4,000 people. It was destroyed in an earthquake in 263 AD, and it probably looked something like this when it was brand new. Now across from the street of facades we come to another tomb, higher up in the hill. Then next we come to what are called the royal tombs. Urn tomb, the silk tomb, the Corinthian tomb, and the palace. Let's look at these individually. The first one we come to is the urn tomb. Melchior II, a Nabatean king who died in 70 AD, was buried here. It has the largest cavity constructed by them anywhere, and later in the 5th century it was turned into a church by the Byzantines. Next we come to the Corinthian tomb. It's a small-scale reproduction of the treasury that has mainly been eroded away. Next we come to the badly weathered 3-story tall palace tomb. It had very small rooms in it, and it looks like this now, but probably like this when it was first built. And now it's time to leave the royal tombs and head out actually into the open area, the brownish area here. This was the flat area, the valleys in between, and as you can see here in front of the tombs, there was a lot of area for building, and this is where they actually lived most of the time. Again, the tombs were only for burying the dead, and it might have looked something like this. Some of the reconstructions the archaeologists who are digging there have made. The colors are based on pieces of plaster that they found, and there was water everywhere. Now let's go to the first part, the colonnaded street that ran through the central part of the city. This would be like the Cardo Maximus we saw in Jerusalem and also in Jerash, and would look like this in its heyday. Next, in the middle of the colonnaded street, we find the Timanus Gateway. It was a 3-arch gate built here in 125 and probably looks something like this when completed. On the right is the Byzantine church built in the 5th century by reused materials from around the area. It has some beautiful mosaic floors. Next we come to what was called the Great Temple area, but many now think it was probably a public building for holding public meetings with its semicircular seating area that it had, and had no religious purposes at all. Next we come to Qasr al-Bint Temple Complex. It was the best preserved of any of the buildings that were built by stone here. Most of them were carved from stone, but this one was built by using stones. It was built in 25 BC and was to worship their god Ishara, who is the god of the dead. You eat a meal with him and the dead together, and probably look like this somewhat. That pretty well finishes the places we can look at today, but there's much more. We could head up the steps and go to other places higher up. One of those places is Al-Dir, called the monastery. After a pilgrimage to walk all the way up here, the various religious groups would meet in this building and have a meal together. Later it was converted to a church, and now it's time for us to leave Petra.
Well, it sure was hot here at Petra today. I think you made a very good choice riding in on a golf cart. Do you think I can get a ride back out so I don't have to walk? Petra is a truly fun place to visit, and it is so colorful it is impossible to take just a few pictures. I have visited here so many times that I have come to take it all for granted, and then I see some wild color combination and it just makes me want to eat a can or something. I know you don't have too much time here, so I will not take up any more of it. Have a wonderful day and remember to stay well hydrated.
But Deborah's got to get some more touching in before she leaves. Deborah's the one on the right. And then we get in our golf cart chariot and we head back out. I'm mainly just going to let you look at this trip out. I'd say spend 2 days.
At least this floor is a lot better.
this car by water through a wake place in a rock flowing down into the canyon. And finally, we arrived back at our starting point of our ride. After we arrive back, we go into the visitor center for a few minutes, and then we head out to look at some of the gift shops. I would have paid it for just us two to ride. Then we head over to the museum that was built by the Japanese. It's going to be a fairly straightforward through it, going from archaeological age to archaeological age as we go. Let's look around some. We're not going to put all the pictures here since this is getting rather long. You never know when you're going to find some crackpots, and the Nabateans were experts in water engineering. This is their water pipes that they made out of clay. The earliest habitation here was a Neolithic village like this one. And here you can see the King's Highway that we followed down to Petra and the various nations that were on this side. And now it's time to head out and head back to the hotel on the Dead Sea for the night. Because of the long 4-hour drive to and from Petra, our guide Omar talked about a lot of different subjects. A few of them were of interest. First off, Arabs do not consider Iranians to be Arab people. They say they are Persian people. Also, he was saying that King Hussein has absolute power. Even though there is a parliament, they cannot overrule him, but the people love him because he's so good to the people. Like Queen Aaliyah working with the handicapped people and helping them to have jobs. We'll eat some cheese and bread on the bus as we travel so we don't have to stop. And then we're headed back down toward the Sea of Galilee and our hotel for the night. The white church on top of that hill is Mount Nebo, and then we are in for the night, ending day 12 and basically our touring days.